Cool. Well, this is another awesome guest we've got here on Flow Rugby. It's Paul Lasike, the United States national team center and center for the Harlequins in the English Premiership, one of the best teams in the entire world. Former Chicago Bear and former BYU football player as well. So this is a very exciting guest to have on, Paul. Thanks for hopping on.
No, thanks for having me.
So I wanted to just chat with you a little bit about your journey and kind of, how you've gotten to where you are today. So, winding the clock back, where did it all start for you?
I was born in New Zealand. 9 of 10 children, and that's where I was born and raised till I was 17. So I just graduated high school in New Zealand and went on basically an exchange to the US. I grew up obviously playing rugby. Then I went on an exchange to the US for a few months, and basically there were a couple of scouts for a college program out there, BYU, and they offered me the opportunity to go to school and play rugby. And so continued playing rugby there, and then that led to me giving American football a shot. And then did a couple years of that at college, and then did a couple years in Chicago, first on the practice squad, and then my second year on active roster.
Yeah.
And then I came back to rugby back in 2018, and and then got an offer to come play over here in England. And so I'm just finishing up my second season here. I mean, the pandemic's going on, but I would be finishing just my second season here in England for the Harlequins.
That's pretty awesome. Pretty awesome journey all over the place too.
Yeah, definitely. It's been cool. It's been really, really fun.
Had you had any experience with American football before you got picked up by the BYU?
No, I'd never even been to even been to an American football game. So I had seen it before on TV and whatnot. But my first real exposure to it was when I was in pads on the sidelines. So that was my first.
Crazy.
Yeah, no, it was crazy. It was tough learning it, but it was an awesome experience.
Were you playing at BYU at the same time as Johnny Linehan?
Yeah.
So did y'all both jump over to football at the same time?
He was a couple years after me.
Okay.
So I did 2012, 13, and 14. And I believe he done 14, 15, and 16.
Okay.
So we played together 1 year though.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys were pretty dominant. That was probably some of the most dominant collegiate rugby that's been played. Was you guys in that, I guess, like 2010 to 14 range?
Yeah. It started. Yeah. Well, 2009 was our first year that we won it against Cal.
Yeah.
Probably my favorite year, to be honest. That was my freshman year. And that year was special. So 2009 to about 2014 or 15 was really a really good program there. They had good coaches and good players, and so the whole thing was pretty awesome. So it kind of died off a little bit, but
yeah.
It's still a decent program. So
yeah, I know the coach moved on. That's always tough to kind of bounce back from.
Yeah, Smithy, David Smith. He was awesome, and he'd been there forever as well. So
yeah,
it was all good.
So you were playing was Sean Davis there when you were playing?
Yeah, Sean Davies, Kyle Sumption, a bunch of boys. Yeah, a bunch of.
Were you before or after the? I mean, were you before the Whippies?
I was. Was I? Yeah, no. The same. It was the same thing. So I started there before them, but I think, and then we linked up. my junior and senior year was their first, or yeah, that was their initial seasons. So we've done a couple years together with the Whippy brothers. I'm still really close with them because we played at Utah together as well, the Utah
That's right.
Warriors. So yeah, no, they're awesome players. So
Yeah. There's a ton of guys from that era that are, professional and American representatives now.
yeah.
So you went into the football team. What was the difference, main differences to you in the kind of the setup with the football program versus the rugby program at BYU?
Yeah, like you mentioned, during that time, like 2009 to about 2014, um, the setups on both were really good because they really like complemented each other. The rugby team, we used to lift in the student athlete building where the football players would also lift, and so we had access to that gym, the nutrition room, and it was a really good setup, and so it was good for us to be able to just be able to focus on rugby really because a lot of the facilities and the training grounds and fields were decent because we played at South Field, which was it was the men and women soccer field. Those fields are really nice. No, so the setup of both were really good when I was there. I don't know. Well, actually, I know before I got there, they used to just the rugby team at least used to just lift in um the public gyms.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, and so those years that I was there was actually really good. I enjoyed it. So we had good facilities and access to all the weight rooms and stuff, which was nice.
What did you think about the level of competition, jumping into football and like a new sport and, obviously Division I, that's the highest level you can play at for American college.
Yeah,
So, I mean, that's some pretty good athletes you just jumped right in with.
yeah. Now it was tough at the start because, like I mentioned earlier, I didn't really know much about American football, so learning the game was tough. Um, rugby players that there's good athletes in both sports.
Of course.
The only thing learning like the nuances of the game of football, that's what made it really hard. The fact that you had to keep your hands inside of your
Yeah.
chest, otherwise you'll be penalized for holding, and things like that. So that was the toughest part. And yeah, so my first year I really only done scout team, like I didn't even really play my first year.
Uh-huh.
So that was all a learning experience, but that was also frustrating, because as a competitor you want to just play,
Right.
and so training and not playing, that can be discouraging at times. So that was a real test for me, but I'm really glad that I just stuck with it, even though I wasn't playing my first year. I just stuck with it and really just hung in there, and then it kind of paid off my junior and senior year where I got to play a little bit. And but yeah, I'm glad that I stuck with it. It was tough though.
Yeah, definitely. Was Taysom Hill quarterbacking at the time?
Yeah, he was quarterback. Yeah, like every single year I was there,
Just,
he was always at the helm. He got injured. He had a couple unfortunate injuries the
yeah.
years that I was playing. And then it wasn't. So I had gone, and he had one more year eligibility. He did really well. And obviously he's doing really well in the NFL now. So
Yeah.
no, he was an animal at BYU.
I remember I'm from Austin, Texas, so I grew up a big Longhorns fan. And so there was a couple games where y'all kind of stuffed the Longhorns. And
Yeah.
I remember that bumming me out.
Are
But
you? Was that the one at BYU or the one in Austin?
there was,
Played them twice. I played them twice.
I think
So that was
I went
2012.
to the one in Austin, and the Longhorns won that one. The one that I went
Oh,
to,
yeah.
one of the games. But then the one I distinctly remember was at BYU, and I remember BYU ran for like almost 500 yards. It was one of
Yeah.
the
Yeah, I remember.
record-setting performance.
Yeah. No, that playing at Austin was like the biggest stadium I've ever played in my life.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it's one of the biggest in the world. Period.
yeah, it was. There was over 100,000 watching, And I just remember it being really hot down there.
Yeah.
And it was like, it was just so many people. The stadium was massive.
Yeah.
And it was hard to ignore.
So after college, when you had finished up your eligibility, did you have a tough decision to make between going professional football or coming back to rugby?
Nah, it wasn't tough. Like it was, like I already had set my mind to the fact that I'm at least going to give it a go before
Yeah.
I return to rugby. So that decision was made. It was just a matter of if I'd get an opportunity anywhere to play.
Right.
So it was initially Arizona. They signed me as an undrafted free agent, and then after I got cut on the last cuts during during training camp, and then Chicago claimed me, and then I went to Chicago after that. So yeah, I was grateful for that opportunity, because it was kind of the path into getting me into the NFL. So
What's the rigor like, going through NFL training camp and just the general practice structure of NFL, and how did that really compare to what you'd done in the past?
it was tough mentally, man, because like you're coming out of college, and I wasn't like very good in college, but I was one of the senior players, my senior year coming out of college, and then you go into the NFL, and it's just like everyone's really good and willing to like sacrifice everything to try and make a roster somewhere.
Yeah.
And so that part was challenging, but it was cool to be able to go there and just compete with them, like knowing that, okay, this is awesome because you get to compete and see like top athletes in the world, like world-class athletes.
Yeah.
And so that was almost like mind-boggling. And there were times where I was like, I remember seeing Larry Fitzgerald and just being like, wow, this guy's like,
Yeah.
this guy's a hero in American football.
Yeah.
And like, see, I didn't know much about American football, but I knew who he was when I went to Arizona. And so that was it was kind of like a starstruck moment. But yeah, it was tough mentally, but it was awesome in the fact that you got to test yourself against like all of the other best rookies, across the country. So
What was it like when you got that first, or how did it go when you got that first call to say, we're going to sign you to the active roster?
yeah, I was in Chicago. That was like a huge weight off my shoulders because it was like, because my first year I was only on the practice squad in Chicago. And then going into my second year, my goal was to at least get on the active roster at some point during the season. And so you're going through training camp, you start out with 90 players, and then they cut it down to 53, and then they'll add on 10 practice squad players. So they're cutting, almost a third of the players there at training camp.
It's crazy.
So, yeah, I remember having a really good preseason that year. But I thought I had a good preseason in Arizona my first year too, and I still got cut. So,
Yeah.
it's just so hard to make it, in the NFL. So I had a really good preseason, and I remember going on to the fourth and final preseason game against Cleveland, and I ended up breaking my wrist. But I had like one of the best games I'd ever played, like in the NFL, like preseason wise. And I just remember being like, okay, I have a really good feeling about this, but I just don't know, And I got off the field. I remember like checking out my wrist, and then they were like, yeah, it's sure enough, there was a little fracture in my wrist.
Yeah.
And I remember the coach, John Fox, coming over and being like, you had a really good preseason. And this was the day after. So, and final cuts were made the day after that game. So during that day, we would have found out if we made it or not.
Yeah.
It's great. And so I was in the physio room, and he's like, you had a great season. I know that your wrist is broken, but like, I think you can either go on injured reserve, or we're looking at, starting you with the season, and he basically told me that.
That's awesome.
Because it's not like there's a list and you see if your name's on the list. It's just if you don't get a call, that means you're expected to be in on Monday,
Yeah.
or Tuesday, whenever the first day was. They might call you and let you know, but a lot of the times you don't really get a call. Like that was basically it for me. I didn't hear, other than that, what coach told me, I didn't hear anything. So I went in, and you basically just see like, okay, this is the squad, you know. And so I remember the day after I called my family and told them, like, you know, this is one of the hardest and awesome accomplishments I've ever been able to, you know. And so, yeah, that was just the beginning though, you know. So, but I remember that distinct feeling of just being like, wow, like I actually accomplished the goal that I'd set my mind to. And I remember starting the very first play of that 2016 season against the Texans, and
that's awesome.
Yeah, even that season, but you know, like I said, it was start. Even that season was bumpy because I was only active for 12 of the 16 games, you know. So there were games that I was inactive and on the practice squad, because you know it's hard to stay around, and we weren't doing very well those seasons. Like we weren't winning games, and it was tough. So like being a business, and it is, they got to look somewhere to just, you know, make changes, even if it isn't a player's fault or anything that losses are being, just they have to look somewhere. And if you're not like a franchise player, or if you're not valuable enough to them, then they'll release you, or they'll deactivate you to the practice squad or whatever, you know. So, but yeah, no, it was an awesome, crazy roller coaster experience.
Was there anybody when you were, you know, in on the field playing, you know, in the regular season? Was there any sort of guy on the field, and you know, you're a beast yourself? Was there anyone that you were like, wow, that guy's an absolute monster?
Yeah, it was every week. It was every week that was the same. So if you're in, because I was more of like in the games that I played, I was more of a situational, so like third and short, fourth and short. And so usually the plays that I was involved in, like, were all just high collisions, you know.
Yeah.
So you're just going to run head on into either a linebacker or a defensive end, and you just have to just really, and they know, the thing is, they know you're coming too. So like, you know, if it's 3rd and 1, if you're a linebacker, you know, you're going to guard the run play first. So usually if you're a middle linebacker, you're looking at the fullback or the tight end, whoever the blocker is, and you know you guys are just going to crash helmets, you know. So as a fullback, every play you went into, it's just like, hey, you just got to go in and be the nail or the hammer. So
yeah, yep, that's brutal. But yeah, I mean, congrats on making it happen. I doubt there's very many players that pick up football at around age 20 that have made the NFL, period. So that's quite an accomplishment on your
thanks for that. There are more and more players though actually giving it a go, especially even from here in England. There's a couple, maybe a handful of guys that have gone over, and there's a new pathway program that you can go into in the NFL. And so there's a couple of boys that have played rugby that have gone over to give it a shot, and have actually been doing well. So
I know the most recent was Christian Wade, and he actually had done fantastic in preseason, but I guess didn't land on a roster yet.
Yeah, he was on the practice squad for that team though.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, so like, they get to go on the practice squad and not count against the roster limit. So that's what's so awesome for international players to go through that route, because you get like a year for free on the practice squad to learn.
Yeah. Because I was wondering because he didn't return to the Premiership, so I guess that would explain. Why.
Who was he with?
Buffalo, or he was with Buffalo.
Buffalo.
Yeah.
So he was with them, and he was on their practice squad the whole season, I believe. And then he'll be going into a second season now, actually, for mini camps and whatnot.
Nice. So for you, after you went through NFL, played a couple of seasons, what sort of prompted you to come back to rugby, and was that a tough decision to make?
There was the new league, the MLR in the US. So that was Kimball Kajar. He coached me at BYU, and he was one of like the founders, or something along those lines, to help promote the MLR.
Yeah.
And he was owner of the Utah team. And so the franchise that went in, and he asked me if I wanted to go play at Utah in that new competition. And that's basically how I got back into it. So he really gave me the opportunity to come back into rugby, and then from there, USA picked me back up.
Yeah.
So no, it happened. Yeah, it all happened within 6 months, or 6-7 months of each other. Because I got released from Chicago in June of 2017, and then February of 2018 was our first games back.
You played, yeah, right. So you went through, was that the ARC in beginning of 2018?
18.
Yeah, and then into the summer, and that's probably been one of the best years for American rugby. That 2018
it was.
year, and I mean, so you played a big part in that game against Scotland. What was that like? Going out and taking down a tier 1 nation.
Yeah, that was probably one of my favorite games of all time, to be honest.
That was awesome.
It was an awesome game to be a part of, and I was still relatively new, like coming back into it. It was that would have been my fifth game back playing, after 4 years. And so, it was awesome to be a part of it, and it kind of exposed me to what international rugby is like against a good country.
Yeah.
That was an awesome game. It was a special game to be a part of with the boys, and I'll never forget that one.
Yeah, it was. I remember watching that and up in my apartment in college and with my buddies, and it was so cool. Because they had jumped out immediately on you guys and scored, and then like y'all just stuck around and then kind of took control. And
that's basically exactly how it happened. They got out of the bats fast, and then for us it was just to like keep it within range,
Yeah.
And then a couple just like Joe Tapate, AJ McGinty.
Yeah.
A couple boys just like pulled it through for us. So it was awesome.
Yeah, you guys were phenomenal that game. So had you been reached out to by Harlequins before that game, or did it come after?
That one, the Harlequins came after, but there were some other clubs as well that had been approaching me as to like whether I'd be interested in playing overseas. But all of that was just kind of nothing set in stone.
Right.
Then it was after Scotland, and then after we beat Canada, Harlequins approached me and asked if I'd like to come over, and it's been great to have come over and experience this, and to still continue to be playing at this level. It's awesome.
And you've just re-signed, right? Or
I re-signed. I re-signed with it's awesome for me and my family, to stay here, and kids in school, and so it's we're really happy with that.
What's life in the Premiership like?
It's cool, man. I mean, it's life in the Premiership. It's just rugby, man. A lot of rugby. Like, you think in the NFL they consider 7 or 17 weeks or 16 games a long season,
Right.
But professional, like Premiership rugby, mate, there's I don't even know how many games there are. You go from basically September to the beginning of June,
It's
you
crazy.
know? Like, that's ridiculous. And then you get 5 weeks off, and then you're back in at the end of July,
Do you feel
for
like do you feel like there's any significant differences in how rugby's played, in England compared to growing up in New Zealand?
I don't know. It's too far. It's too long ago to remember what.
Yeah.
Because the last time I played rugby in New Zealand, I was 17. So it was over 10 years ago. I can't really remember. Although I know that it was like even high school is really competitive. Um, but I'd say they're very similar in terms of. Although, sorry, Premiership is a lot of emphasis on defense. Especially our team.
Hmm.
And from what I've heard and what I see as well with Super Rugby, um, is a lot of it's on attack and offense. A fast-paced game.
Right.
Um, not to say that Premiership isn't. Premiership is fast as well, but a lot of it is like very low-scoring games. I feel like because the
Yeah.
defenses are so strong. Yeah, but differences. Yeah, I'd say there's more similarities with the two than there are differences.
Yeah. And I got two pretty rugby mad countries that are, rich in a lot of talent. So, uh,
Yeah, exactly.
so going through your first 2 years in the Premiership, who have kind of stood out to you as some of the toughest guys to play against, or guys that you hold in the highest regard, either on your team or against you?
Yeah, yeah, like you mentioned, there's talent. There's talent everywhere, and going back to that question of like when you ask me like about NFL players or teams that I found hard, it's the same here, man. Like there's so many. It's so hard to win games in the Premiership, just like in the
Yeah.
NFL or in Super Rugby because it's the highest level.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's always like for instance in our team, there's always a handful of players that stick out as just like brilliant players. Like Marcus Smith, he's the
Yeah.
youngin.
Yep.
He's our 10.
Yeah.
Alex Ombrand, Gabs Batoye, Danny Kerr. There's just Mike Brown, there's Francis Haile. There's just too many, Ben Tapawai. All of those guys that have played like at the international level and even in Super Rugby that have done both. Like Francis and Ben both
Joe,
played.
Joe Marchand
Yeah.
now.
Huh?
It didn't Joe Marchand.
Oh, Joe Martin. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. He went over to Super Rugby.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and he's done really well too.
He has with the Blues.
Yeah, he's over with the Blues right now. He's done really well. Um, and I thought you were going to say Joe Mala. Joe
Oh no,
Mala's a character as
no,
well.
no. He's not a super.
Yeah,
He's not a super rugby guy.
yeah,
No,
no,
he's good
he's an
though. Real
awesome
good.
player.
Excellent.
Yeah. So there's heaps of talent on the team. When you scan it, that stick out to me as just like really good players, and so it's cool to be able to be in the mix with them and just even Chris Robshaw, like the captain,
Yeah.
um, like to be in the mix of those guys that have played at like the highest level worldwide is cool to just mix and mingle. So
Have you gotten to line up across from TT and Joe Tafate?
yeah, we've played them. Yeah, we've crossed paths.
Nice.
Like you play everyone. So I've played TT, we've played Joe in Worcester. I don't know if I've actually played on the same time as Joe though. I have with TT. I have with AJ as well. AJ
Right at
McGinty.
Sale, yeah.
And like on at the same time as them. But yeah, no, you play all the teams, and it's good to see them and chat with them during the game and after the game and whatnot.
I
Yeah,
love seeing it's awesome seeing just more and more American players getting, Eagles getting to play, Premiership and Pro 14. I think it's great for us.
yeah. No, it is. It's good to get exposure. and then bringing it back to the US and, you know, sharing it with the national team and the younger, you know, MLR and whatnot. That's the only way that the national team will continue to get better, is if players are going overseas and exposing themselves to the high, you know, not to knock down MLR, because
Right.
MLR is actually great. You know, it's a great opportunity for players to expand their rugby as well. So
It's cool. Yeah, it's exciting. Well, kind of running out of time here, but I want to ask you two more questions before you go. First
yeah.
one is, what kind of words of advice or words of wisdom or encouragement would you have for young players coming up into the next generation?
Young players that are wanting to get into rugby and to develop their rugby, I would say, is just to stay consistent. Yeah, and although it can be hard, because I have a lot of younger cousins and nephews and nieces, you know, in California that are playing rugby as well, and it's hard because, you know, there's not much exposure to it, but, you know, that's part of the sacrifice if you want to, you know, get your, you know, improve and expand your rugby, is that sometimes you, at those younger ages where it's not established yet, you
Right.
might have to drive certain distances or, you know, away to expose yourself to rugby and get looked at. But yeah, just to stay consistent and to keep it up really, and have fun while you're doing it. Because you know, if you're not having fun, then, you know, what's the point? But yeah, stay consistent and have fun.
Nice. I like that. And then last question for you, in your words, what is rugby?
What is rugby? I would say physical. It's respect, you know, because when it's played at the highest level, um, you know, respect has to be shown, and or you see a great move
Hey,
executed or
hey,
whatnot.
sorry. It cut out right when you started. Could you start over
Oh
again?
yeah,
What is rugby?
yeah. So what is rugby to me? I'd say it's a physical game. It's a game of respect, you know, between both teams that is shown. Um, you know, it's tough in the sense of it's mentally tough. You know, you got to have mental toughness for it. And then it's a beautiful sport. You know, when you see a great set piece move executed, you know, it's beautiful, and it's a team sport as well. Everyone has to participate on offense and defense, which makes it's such a wonderful game. But yeah, no, I that to me would be some of the things that would sum up what rugby is.
Totally. Well, Paul, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. You're one of my favorite players in the game, and, you know, becoming an icon to American rugby players growing up. So it's been really
Yeah,
awesome for me to chat with you, and I thank you for taking the time.
yeah. Thanks for having me, Alex. Take it easy, man. Thank you.
Likewise. Take care.
Cheers. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.